Hi there, Kelly here, answering 2 questions for myself, and you can tag along as I explore. Are watercolor pencils easier to use than regular watercolor? And can I use them instead of regular watercolor? I'm trying them out on a couple of mandalas that I created in Illustrator. I just did the outline in Illustrator, and I printed it out on Fabriano Artistico hot pressed 140-pound paper. I printed it out on my inkjet printer, and although inkjet ink tends to bleed if it gets wet, I used a 1/2 pixel line width using only black ink at about 50% opacity, and I didn't experience any bleeding as I dampened the watercolor pencil. I made a couple of prints so that I could test out and see if there was any difference between my Caran d'Ache Supercolor watercolor pencils and the Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils, and spoiler alert, I really didn't find a significant difference. I'd be hard-pressed to tell which pencil was which if I weren't looking to see. So I was kind of hoping to see a difference, but I really didn't. I'll use them interchangeably from now on and not worry about which one is which. So going back to the main questions that I had about watercolor pencil, the answers from my experience here were really sort of and sort of. I'll explain. So I was kind of hoping that I could replace watercolor with watercolor pencils. Really, I think they would be better used in conjunction. Like maybe do the big washes with watercolor, and then if I wanted to use the watercolor pencil, use them to add in some shading. But what I found was that it was nice to be able to sharpen the watercolor pencil to a point and really get into little tight corners and spaces. If you're a beginner and you're still struggling with the saturation of the brush and water to pigment ratio, this could free up a little bit for you, but you'll still have to use the right amount of water on your brush, and you'll still have to use the right brush to be able to get into those little corners. What did surprise me was I expected that the watercolor pencil would make it easier to get nice, even washes in larger areas, because my reasoning was that if you got if you could put the pencil down evenly, it should be really easy to just wash over it and activate the watercolor pencil. But what I found, and it could also just be because of the pigment that I was using, in watercolor, some pigments tend to granulate, and they're using the same pigments in these watercolor pencils that they use in watercolor. So if the pigment granulates and it's hard to get a nice even wash, it was just as hard to get a nice even wash using the watercolor pencil. So it didn't buy me that forgiveness that I was hoping that it would. The other thing is I noticed that it was easier to use a fine liner to do the outlines. So instead of using a watercolor pencil to do the outlines around the petals, I just used a fine liner, and I was sort of surprised that a watercolor pencil wouldn't be good for that, but I would have had to keep sharpening the pencil to keep it at that nice sharp point, and I found that a fine liner just was much easier and quicker. And the other thing that I noticed about using the watercolor pencil, it was like I was painting it twice. So it didn't save any time. And that surprised me. I don't know why I didn't think about this, but first you have to lay down the pigment drawing with the pencil, and then you have to go back over it and activate it. That's just not the time saver that I was hoping it would be. It sounds like I'm being a Debbie Downer on watercolor pencils, and really, they are fun to use. I think they could shine in a lot of respects. I think they would be great to take when you can't take water and you don't want to take brushes, but you do want to do a watercolor painting, you could take them with you out when you're out and about, and then you've got a way to lay down the pigment and do your painting, and I think it would be great for that. Come back home and activate it, or come back to your studio or wherever you like to work, and that would be a great application for watercolor pencils. I think it would also be really good for kids, although the Kimberly ones are pretty inexpensive, but I think the price is going up because they've gotten a couple of reviews, and the reviews were favorable because they are good to use. They're nice. They lay down well. I really didn't notice much of a difference between those and the expensive watercolor pencils. So for sure, I think I would probably start out with the Kimberly pencils if I were going to buy some, and just see what you think. If you think that this is something that you want to spend a lot of money on, because they're not cheap. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're having a great summer. Try to stay cool. It is so doggone hot out there. Please like, subscribe, and tell all your friends. Bye!